Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a former professional MMA fighter. He's a respected MMA and Jiu-Jitsu coach, formerly at American Top Team, and now teaching out of his own school, Black Label Martial Arts Academy in Charleston, South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today for the third time on the show by Professor Malachy Friedman. How are you today, Malachy?
I'm doing good. I feel like I deserve like a Saturday Night Live jacket. You know, like when there's when they make it 3 times on the show and they get they're on the Hall of Fame.
We should just skip your intro and let you just do a whole monologue. It should just be a monologue at this point, and then we'll start the show. Yeah. No, I appreciate your time, buddy. It's been I think last year we had you on like August of last year. So catch us up. What have you been up to in the meantime?
Man, I've been busy. I created 2 new instructionals. I went Heisengard 2.0. Nice. I have a new position called the Malaplata. I finally decided to name something after myself after doing so many different positions and naming it other stuff. And I'm working on a MMA instructional. So we already have it done, our MMA instructional site with 2 other coaches who are really respected, Joachim Ingberg and Dennis Davis from Extreme Couture. So it's going to be really, really good. All the small details and stuff that you only get when you go to giant camps or different places like that, we're going to bring it home so people can kind of learn from home. Because that's what I did. You know, everybody has to learn in their own setting. You know, not everybody can be in California or Vegas or Florida.
Yeah, that's outstanding, man. That's really cool. You know, that really perfectly leads us into the topic I want to talk to you about today, man. I want to talk to you about the idea of learning and training and progressing, I guess by any means necessary is the best way to say it. Like basically we're all going to go through injuries and obstacles in our training. We're going to have to take time off, whether it's for injuries or work or family related stuff. So I'd love to pick your brain on how someone going through a rough patch like that can still continue to learn no matter what. So let's start with injuries. I've broken it down, and this is something I know most people listening have gone through it. Yeah. I've broken this down into 3 separate categories. We have people who are seriously injured and cannot train at all, who are going to be out for a significant amount of time. Then we have people who are more moderately injured, like they may be out from anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. Then we have people dealing with minor, more nagging injuries that are just kind of disrupting their training. And I think it's important for people to hear that just because you're not able to go to class and roll a bunch of rounds, it doesn't mean you can't train. Like even if you can't actually go to the academy, you can still train. It's just training doesn't have
you can go to the academy. I don't know if you did any research on me or you picked this topic, but I've had 3 spine surgeries.
Yes, that's why I picked it.
Okay, cool. So I've had my neck done, which pretty much ended any MMA aspirations, and then I had another neck surgery because something went wrong and my other arm died. And then I'm finally about to open up my school, and 3 months in, my lower back goes out, and the doctor's like, listen, if you bend over, if you show anything, you're going to need a real big surgery. This is going to be bad. And I'm like, dude, I just opened up my school. 3 months. People want me to roll, want me to teach them. They want me to, I got to murder all these guys first so they know who's who. And then, so I just kept going, and then I had a lower back surgery. I don't even count my knee surgeries as injuries. I had meniscus repair twice. I don't look at that as an injury because of all the other long-term injuries that I've had. We're talking about a serious injury, something that is potentially around forever, right? And you can't, so that's the first one. We cannot go to the gym, right? Or we cannot train during this time period. I think is the biggest time for growth. We get so wrapped up in rolling that we only care about what happened during those rolls, right? That's how we think that we get better. That's how we think that we're improving. That's not necessarily true, at least from my perspective, at least from what I've seen from myself. A lot of times we need to remove ourselves from training. We need to not just look at, oh, I hit this arm bar, or I did this, or I spun around and and then a lot of times you do a whole bunch of stuff that you get swept here, there, but you submitted the guy. And then you're like, oh, all the other stuff that happened in the roll doesn't matter because I submitted him. Right. Whereas if you're going against somebody better, once they sweep you, you're not submitting them. So I think a lot of the things that I did was that I immediately focused on things that were not part of my game. So like I had half guard that was very, very good. But I didn't have a really good gi half guard. And I studied, I got to give credit, Kyotera had one of the best half guard instructionals around. I mean, there's some really good guys. I watched Jake McKenzie. I watched a whole bunch of other guys. But Kyo had a really, really good guard for half guard. And I studied it. I wrote it down. I visualized it. I then took the videos and then edited them so that it was just the techniques. So once I already memorized everything, I had just like all of his moves, just like kind of going back and forth, no instruction, because I've already watched the thing 3 times and took notes on it. And I would just kind of memorize it. And visualization is a huge thing. All right. So our brains don't really know the difference between visualization and actual practice. The only difference that is there that our brain does recognize is that there's a lack of senses, right? So smell, touch, those things. But if you've been doing jiu-jitsu long enough, you kind of understand what it feels like. Like if you're watching a match, you kind of like almost move your body a little bit with him like that. Like you're like, you kind of know what it feels like to do the move. Once you see something get hit, you actually kind of understand how that would feel to move through that position. And then you kind of have an understanding of what it feels like when you're hitting arm bars or when you're hitting what's a good arm bar, what's a bad arm bar. I can think right now in my mind the perfect arm bar and how it should feel, right? So I'm then visualizing myself in positions, sometimes in third person positions, because I don't know how my brain works, but it kind of works like I'm looking over top of it, but I'm imagining that I'm doing it. And I add the senses of like, okay, that's how that grip would feel. And that's how it would feel to move my body and shift it underneath. And I did a lot of that. I mean, like my first neck surgery, it was really bad. It was an 8-hour surgery because I had so many bone spurs just like all over my spine and I had to clear it out. And so like, in the neck surgery after they did it, it kind of was like a whiplash problem. Like, right. So they went through the muscles and the muscles never really recovered for a very, very long time. They felt like it was almost like I had been in a car crash. So being able to, like, that's where I transferred from no gi to gi because I couldn't have people smacking down on my neck all the time. Like, you know, I was at top team. So of course you got a lot of like dudes who are, they're there for violence. You know what I mean? They're like, it's high level training. At that point, I was studying and I was visualizing and I was going through those different techniques. And then I came back onto the mats and it was almost like I had done all of the classes, done all of the training, done all of the different, like I had been training this, I've been being taught this, I had been drilling this, and I already knew it very, very well. And that was one of the most surprising things I think ever was that I gave myself a very, 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 very good gi half guard game through visualization. And I picked it up right away. So that's just kind of like its own thing where it's like, and I also went to the gym too. Like, so there's like a lot of times looking at jiu-jitsu, watching it, like I know it's for some people that's too much work, right? That's because they want to enjoy themselves. Enjoying themselves means winning and losing and rolling, right? And when you have somebody say, hey, come watch the match, come watch and then like when you're watching different people training, you're like, oh, that guy should do this. Oh, that guy, oh, I see the hole there. Oh, I saw what he made a mistake on. And your brain is registering all these things, you know, and it's saying like, well, he doesn't have the underhook. He's screwed. Right. And that kind of should play back in your head, be like, man, I should always have that underhook or watching somebody take the back with an underhook, just something simple like that. You go, man, I should be looking for that more often. Like I don't ever think I never take the back like that. So watching other people training and watching the techniques being taught and taking notes, those are huge ways of when you're seriously injured of getting better. I know it's not the fun stuff, but it is what it is. And if you want to improve it, if you want to win, if you want to be good, that's what it takes. It takes a little bit of like during those down times to actually get to work, you know? So what's the next one was if I'm moderately injured?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I was going to say there is there's two things I really wanted to zoom in on, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
One, I love that you brought up the idea of just showing up to class just to sit and watch. Like, I think a lot of people assume that, like, well, if I can't actually go train, like, they probably don't even want me there. That's not true. Like, man, like, you can absolutely show up, line up, bow into class, however your school does it. When the class gets going, do what you can, and then whenever they've hit the point where you're physically limited, just go sit down. Just let your instructor know, hey, man, I'm just going to watch today and just sort of take notes. And I've seen really high-level guys do that, and I always admired that. I always admired someone that was injured, still there, sitting there sometimes with a notepad and just jotting stuff down, like you said. The second thing you said there, I really like that you pointed out the way that you processed Kyle Terra's instructional on his half guard, and that's something I'd love to dive in because obviously we're BJJ Fanatics, right? We provide instructionals more than anybody, and then you're one of our premier instructors. So how do you process an instructional, generally speaking? How do you typically dissect and learn from it yourself?
So I don't have all the time in the world, right? So I have my business, right, which is my academy, which feeds my family. So that comes first, right? And then secondly, I want to show my students new stuff. I want to be on top of cutting edge things. So generally I'll do a quick wipe through, right, of things that I see. And I always try to make sure that if I get an instructional, either it's something that I need to work on and I don't know, or it's something I know, but it's going deeper into something else, right? So like, let's say his name right, Lucas Pinheiro.
Oh, Lucas Pinheiro.
Right? Yeah. So he had a really interesting way of pressure passing. I kind of looked at it. It takes a very long time to do it, but it's solid passing, right? And so I know how to pass De La Riva. I've watched every Lucas Lepre instructional. You know what I mean? Like every kind of concept that I could come up with, but the way he was passing that certain guard with, I think it's maybe modern guards or it's basic guards. I don't know which one, but both are really good. And I scroll through really fast and see things that maybe already I kind of do, or put me in a position that I'm in a lot. And then I start to watch that. Right. So I know that now that I don't have the time, I'm not injured. I own a business, that I have limited time to learn these things. So I'm going to find something that already is in my wheelhouse. Like, let's say going into headquarters, right? So I get into headquarters, and I understand the presence of being heavy. I understand the grips. I understand the knee wedge. I understand where the guy's going to try to chair guard, pull me over top and re-guard me. I understand all this. Then I see, okay, what is he doing different? Okay, he's passing to the other side, the side that usually you wouldn't go to, the knee you wouldn't put down. He's killing that hook and he's walking through and becoming almost like a smash pass, but on the opposite side. And I'm like, well, that's something I'm not doing. And can I easily transform that into a position that I can do almost right away, or I can almost teach and train and drill it right away, right? And then once I have some success there, then I start to categorize the next thing. And sometimes the next thing isn't for me, right? Like I go, well, that's not going to be really for me. That's it. I don't need that much of it. So like a lot of times in jiu-jitsu videos and instructionals, you don't need all of it, right? It's a lot. We as instructors show a lot because we don't know what you want, right? We know what works. We know that if you work hard at these other techniques, that they will work, right? They will work for you. But when I show instructional, or if I have something, I'm going to show you everything I can do from there, right? But that doesn't mean that I do everything from there, right? Just because I show a technique doesn't mean that I do that technique constantly from that position. That's just another variation that if you choose that works best for you, fantastic. Sometimes you have to be kind of like pull back a little bit sometimes and be like, hey, that was amazing. The next thing is very similar and is not really in my wheelhouse, or I'm not going to remember it as well. What's the next thing, right? Okay, a lasso gets thrown in. Okay, so how do I deal with the pressure passing with the lasso, right? Because that's my next problem, or my next possible problem, something I'll probably run into against a higher level guy, is that they're going to try to regard with spider, right? A spider regard retention or something like that. And if you look up Tama's Cobra Guard, right? That's another buddy of mine, Johnny Tama. He has Cobra Guard with you guys with BJJ Fanatics. He went over some really good stuff from the De La Riva, playing bottom De La Riva, but also understanding it from the top and bottom, you can kind of go back and forth, understanding of what's happening. And he had the Cobra Guard where he's kind of like pushing the guy who puts him in headquarters, but does knee wedge, so you can't chair guard and lift him up and over. He punches, and the guy does the capoeira step. And he had probably, out of an instructional that I took out of it, I haven't watched all of it, but I took 4 things right away, right? That I could put into my game, plug and play right away. And so I always do that as something that things that I can do with. I've gotten to a point where there's a lot of different techniques in that instructional that I want to have. I then edit it, right? So I cut it, I edit it, and I already if it's something a big detail that they're going over, I'll keep that in there. But everything else is small segments now. And I just watch that through and through and through and imagine myself doing it, think about it, write it down. Writing things down is incredible for people. I don't think a lot of people understand that. I watched it. Yeah, I watched the instructional. It's like you putting pen to paper and actually writing it out is like a direct marking to your brain that you're thinking something out. You're even putting letters to it. You know what I mean? Rather than just thinking of that's a technique, you're putting letters. De La Riva, grab the left foot, punch the collar, person will backstep. If they backstep, can you reach the pants? If the pants can't be reached, all right, pull them over top. You can go to rocking chair guard, or you can come back up, or into regular guard. There's so many things there. And if my brain is writing it down and I reread it, so now I'm not, instead of watching the videos, I'm now reading it in my notebook, right? And I'm visualizing it from my notebook. So I have even less to go off of than watching it, right? And sometimes watching it kind of messes you up after you've already kind of learned it, because I'm not sure if everybody's like this, but it kind of like almost stuns you, right? You're like, oh, what was that? But when I have it written down in a notebook, a quick look at the notebook, it almost immediately comes back to me. And I think people that we were talking about that come to the gym and that are injured and they're taking notes, these are people that want to be good, right? These are people that want to excel. And if they're doing the correct thing and they're applying the BJJ Fanatics, the instructionals, and they're applying it to things that they already know, and they're staying inside that bubble. Don't go like Barambolos if you can't do open guard, right? Don't do, don't go far out, right? And don't think that if you watch an instructional, you have to know all of the instructional. That's the good thing about jiu-jitsu, right? Is that it's a play and play kind of concept. It's like I can take this knee slide from Lepre and then add a Lucas Pinheiro pressure pass at the end of that, and then go to my simple long step after all those things get kind of stopped and the long steps there, right? So the simplest thing is the long step, right? But I had to entice my opponent out of that by going into a knee slide that doesn't work, and then into a pressure pass that's kind of working. He's pushing away, maybe he gets rid of one frame that's really important, but I still can't pass. And then that long step happens, right? So like I used 3 different people's techniques, right? All in one training. all in one sequence, but none was more important than the other. You know what I mean? Because I could have passed with the pressure. I could have passed with a knee slide. But me putting these games together and understanding what my game is, what I already understand and know, and then adding more things to it is just going to improve that one thing that I know. So I'm building like I always call it, so there's I wish I remember the dang thing I call it, but we'll make something up right now on the fly, pretending that that's what I call it all the time. You gotta do like a Hansel and Gretel, right? Where you leave like little bread marks so you can get back. Hopefully there's no crows and all the other crap that happens to the Hansel and Gretel. But what you need is to be able to go back and retreat. So if you're playing deep half guard and you understand how to get in there, you know the Homer Simpson sweep, maybe the back take, and then you're like, well, I want to start playing waiter guard, right? And there's guys that have started playing waiter guard from crazy different positions, right? And attacking different things. And you're like, well, I kind of want to know that. Well, the waiter guard's going to fit perfectly. But if you make a mistake, you can go back to your deep half. You know what I mean? Like you can go back to like a safety retreat area, and the same thing is, so like there's a position that I use with where I go deep half. And if deep half isn't working, I can then transfer it into the, what does he call it? Coyote or Leitch guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I can just go right to the Leitch guard and almost take the back immediately if I want to. But knowing that those two things are similar, right? That's what I want to make sure that I'm doing. I want to make sure that I'm sticking to similar attacks that I can always go back to something that I already know.
If you were to ask me the biggest thing that I did to help my own training, it would have been writing things down. I'm so happy you emphasized the importance of that. And, when we're talking about people who are severely injured and who are really laid up and can't really do much, going over notes, like that's another huge thing, I think, is being able to review a journal or go over notes like the way that you described that you process your instructionals. Those are all the kinds of things that can be done by anybody when you're laid up and unable to train. So I appreciate you laying all that out.
I'm looking over there. I have 15 notebooks piled on top of each other over there. It's an insane mess. Listen, I somehow leave them open sometimes, and all the papers get shredded, and then I start taking. So that's how I get better too. Yeah. Is my notes start tearing and ripping, and then I have to rewrite them. Dude, as I'm like, oh my God, it's an old scroll.
Dude,
I got to make sure that I have this.
I'll share with you a game changer because I used to have that. Because I'm looking over at my shelf too. I still have a stack of notebooks. But there's a lot of apps now, a lot of note apps like Evernote and UpNote and things like that, where you can use your camera and you can take a picture, and then it will turn it into text for you. So then I'll copy and paste that into a digital note platform. So all my notes that I've taken over the years that are on paper, I've been able to migrate digitally. So, which is way easier to organize. So
I've bought every single thing. So like from like the one where I used to write it down and it would copy it, into a thing. And then I bought a really expensive one that broke immediately. I forget what it was called. It was supposed to, Now I have the Nook thing, or the Kindle, and we'll see if that works. I don't know, man.
Yeah, let me know about that one. That's actually something I'm surprisingly analog for a podcaster. I'm the same way. I love physically writing things down on paper, and then I will transfer it over. I swear there's something to that. In fact, there is. When I first started doing the note taking, it was actually Rafael Lovato Jr. that encouraged me to do that when I was interviewing him many years ago. And I swear he swears too that there's something scientific behind. There's a science behind that about physically writing it down on paper first and then saving it somewhere. Whether you just keep it in the notebook or whether you turn it digital.
I believe in that because I feel it. I feel the difference between when I do it and I don't.
Well, now let me ask you this. So we're talking about people who are severely injured, can't really do much of anything besides watch instructionals, take notes, and watch class. So they cannot be physical. But let's talk about people now who are more moderately injured. Like let's say that they're not completely laid up anymore. They're able to move around, but maybe they're not completely able to jump back into training full force yet. What are some things that these guys can do? The guys and girls that can get to the mats and move, but are a little limited.
So I had a knee injury that kind of popped. I can't really train super, super hard sometimes. I'm getting back to that. Actually, I have a physical therapy in like 2 hours
Cool.
an hour. So I'm sticking with my physical, like trying to get back in shape, trying to get back into like training hard. Like if I could train hard 3 times a week, I'd be really happy. Like one right now is special. So like I hurt my knee and I couldn't play De La Hiva. I can't play De La Hiva really anymore because I have dropped foot in my leg anyway. So it was like, it wasn't that big a deal, but I couldn't play the lasso guard or anything like that. So of course I drilled everything because I'm not going to hurt myself through drilling. Right. So everything I drilled, I felt confident in, and I'm still like, really like I'm really present in my drilling. I'm really feeling good walking myself through things. But when I'm moving around with somebody, or if I'm doing something, like I have to realize that there's parts of my game that I can't play, right? I can't play the lasso and I can't bitch about it either. Right. So you go, okay, well, I would use the lasso, but your brain has to start opening up and start looking at other things. It's like, well, maybe you can't play the lasso from De La Hiva and start to attack from there, but you can do sit-up guard, no problem, right? So sit-up guard takes relatively no knee stress, and there's things that are very similar to spider guard, or at least from stopping somebody from passing your guard. If you can get those sleeves and sit up and start to pull on sleeves, pull on lapels, and you go, okay, well, this is just another thing that I can add to my game. This is something that, as I would normally do the lasso, if I lose the lasso, where do I go from there? Right. So if I have a De La Hiva and I throw my lasso in and I lose it immediately, what am I going to do? Just, I could either retreat back to De La Hiva, hopefully, or I can play my sit-up guard. So now I know that the sit-up guard is something that I can play with my injury, but also something that I can play once I'm not injured and I can't get the thing that I want. Also, it's interesting to find out that there's things that you can do that are very, very similar to almost the thing that you were doing, but you can't do anymore. So De La Hiva itself, with that hook inside, right? Like I used to have the strongest inside De La Hiva hook on God's green earth. Like you're not, like, I don't care. You're not getting through it unless you're doing the right thing. Now, I mean, I'm just pinching basically at the knee with the pit of my leg. And I'm just pinching at the knee and pulling the heel and straightening the knee out a bit, or I'll put it on the ground and push my knee into their knee. And that's basically replicating the same thing that De La Hiva is without the hook. Right. So I'm limiting motion, I'm limiting movement, I'm limiting turn of that foot. And I'm still playing De La Hiva. I'm just playing De La Hiva without a hook. And that started really clicking with me when I was watching Leandro Lowe play his De La Hiva. Sometimes he would play an inside hook De La Hiva, but a lot of times he would just pinch really tight on that upper calf / knee area. And I was like, well, he's playing. I said, this is a new De La Hiva. What's going on here? So I kind of started playing with it a bit, understanding a little bit more. And then there's some guys now probably on Fanatics that have a lot of stuff where they're not playing De La Hiva with the toes inside so much. They're playing it more with straightening the leg. So like if you have your leg over top, where am I? So if you have your leg over top, it kind of goes like this over the knee, right? You're able to stop it from moving inwards or outwards, right? With that clamp. And then if I straighten my leg, it's going to push the knee straight and it's going to limit movement there as well. So it's kind of, you're going to have to figure out things that are similar, and you're going to have to figure out different routes. But at the same time, like, see what you would do without having that other thing. Like that's the whole thing. Like the biggest thing for me, right? Small details, mechanical jiu-jitsu, right? That's the things that's why I'm still in jiu-jitsu, right? Is because there's so many things that are techniques that aren't techniques, or are moves that could become techniques because the mechanics are there. So I really implore people to try to learn the mechanical details. Like, I'm not saying you have to go super deep with it and you have to be, because I know none of the names. I've watched Mikey Musumeci like go into like an insane amount of detail about, like what knee and what toe works and why this is called this muscle and that muscle. I don't know any of that stuff. Right. All the time people are always, I'm like, what is this called? And people are like, it's a hamstring. I'm like, all right, we're using the hamstring. But understanding that you can do similar mechanical processes without the technique that was previously taught to you, if that makes sense. Filling hips. Well, I can't fill my hips. So if you can't fill the hips with your elbow, you can fill the hips with your other hip. It's just, you have to start looking at the positions that you can't do and then see what can be saved from that position. Like, okay, I really like this position, but I can't do it. What can be saved? Okay, three of 6 of these things work. 2 of them don't because it requires me to do something that I'm injured and can't do. What can I replace that with? Right. And I think that's what jiu-jitsu is. I mean, you look at hybrid guards, you look at all these other things. I can't do this. Okay, well, can you throw a lasso in there? So you can't play De La Hiva like you want because your one knee's, let's say you don't have a foot on the other end. Well, can you throw a lasso in on the far lasso? Can you do this? How are you mechanically stopping somebody from moving from this side, right? And from this side. And if 2 of those things you normally do, you can't do, figure out a replacement. The body's only so much, right? We can figure it out. And that's something that I've really found out in my jiu-jitsu. And that's something that with the new techniques that I have is figuring things out. It's like the Heisengard was figuring something out after another thing failed and seeing how similar it was to an omoplata, and then seeing how similar I could get behind the elbow and be on the side of my opponent playing into the Heisengard. And I was really, really basic with it, right? So like I had a couple sweeps, a couple of submissions from there. And then I started getting into the Heisengard and I was like, holy shit, I have all the stuff that I could have. So if I'm behind the elbow and I have access to the legs, I have everything almost that De La Hiva has access to, right? Like if I place my legs inside, chair guard, I have everything there. And then the Malaplata kind of came later, and that was from a failed reverse lasso. And it's kind of like, well, okay, does that, and I check positions. I check, does this move? Can you move here? Can you do anything here? All right. Then I lose one thing and they can move. It's like, okay, I need that. But if I lose that, what can I do to replace that? And that's what jiu-jitsu is. And if you're trying to build a really good game for yourself, you should write down everything you know. Just try it. I tell you, that's what they're like, hey, I'm not coming into class. What do you think I should do? I said, write down everything you know. Write it down, every single thing that you think you possibly know. Number one, that's going to respark your brain into maybe playing stuff that you didn't play for a long time that you did know. And you're like, oh, I haven't hit a guillotine in forever. Like I know all these guillotine attacks, but I don't hit guillotines. So I want them to write down everything that they know. And then I want them to play with those positions, go into the gym, play with the position and take things away from yourself there. Slowly start taking away different controls and see how much of that technique is needed, right? Because a lot of times at high level in jiu-jitsu, you're not going to get 6 of 6 things in the technique, right? So like it kind of like a lot of these sweeps and a lot of these things that happen are like a bastardized version of the technique itself, because the other opponent is so good at shutting everything else down that you get him out of 4 out of 6 things, but he's on his toes. He's posted on his hand. He's almost over. Up. It's time to sit up, scissor your legs, come up, try to like run him down. Like you can't get those 2 extra things that you want for it to be a perfect sweep. You're going to have to you're going to have to bastard that sweep, make it whatever it is, and come up on it. It's like you're never going to sweep a high level guy because you're not going to get 6 of 6. and then figuring out, okay, well, I can do 4 of 6 if I do this. If I put my foot on the hip and kick him up. Well, that's great to know, because now you know another variation to what you were doing. It may not be the smooth version, but it's something that is similar. And if you lose a hook, or if you lose something that you're trying to come up on, you can use that technique again. Like, well, I put my foot on the hip until it stops working, right? Until somebody steam locks you and you're like, oh crap, I've been putting my foot there. I shouldn't do that. And then you go back to the drawing board and figure out, well, how do I not get it locked from that position? Jiu-jitsu is crazy, man. It's wild. And I think it's insane that it's overtaken my life, probably your life, everything that we do. And we can talk about this for a long time and communicate through what is basically a sport or a hobby or an interesting mechanical thing of way of playing a game with each other. And it gets deeper and deeper, and more smarter people get involved with it, the weirder it's going to get. So I think that understanding that your jiu-jitsu is not going to look like your jiu-jitsu in 10 years it's just a culmination of understanding the mechanics of the body. So if you're injured, it sucks. Like when I first got injured, and this is speaking to people who are hurt, right? Don't worry about your knee if you have a 3-month recovery. That sucks. It's not fair. There are people that are going to have permanent injuries or things that are happening to them, or they get some kind of nerve disease or something like that, and is never going to get better, or it's just going to get worse. And being somebody like myself who trained all the time. I mean, I trained nonstop all the time. Anybody who asked me, I trained. Anybody who wanted to spar, I sparred. Anybody who wanted to roll, I rolled. I just did it all the time. And I didn't give myself many breaks, and that's probably why I'm messed up. But when it's taken away from you, it's like it is very, very hard, and it hurts, because that's your thing, And I used to say, like, jiu-jitsu is my girlfriend, or my wife. Just everybody else is dating her right now. Like why I can't train, and like it's kind of like when you watch people train, you're like kind of watching like the thing you love cheating on you, because you want to be involved in it, and it takes a lot of. And I never left the sport. That's the crazy thing, is that all the things that could have made me leave the sport, all the things that could have pushed me away, all the, the people that didn't want me to be an American instructor, or teaching class in certain places, or just whatever, just fallouts from gyms, from all the different other things, not being able to train, not being able to get the one thing I started jiu-jitsu for, to train, right? The one thing I do jiu-jitsu, and I kept doing jiu-jitsu for, to train, and somehow still be able to teach other people it, drill it, show techniques, study it, so I'm still on top of it. It's hard, and it's going to be one of those things where you're going to have to deal with if you have a permanent injury, you're going to have to figure out what's important to you, and you're going to want to train. And sometimes you're just not going to be able to, because if I trained super hard today, I'll probably try to get a roll in today. But if I trained 5 rolls, I would not be able to teach. And if I wasn't able to teach, I wouldn't be able to feed my family. If I'm not able to feed my family, then what? Then, I have other things that are important to me. Jiu-jitsu still rules everything around me, but in a much different way. And that's why I really like teaching kids. That's probably the biggest thing, is that I love teaching adults. Adults are different. I don't really get along with most adults. So I see things differently than most adults. And they don't really like my mentality sometimes. But with kids, man, with kids is so if you're a parent and you're watching this and you're doing jiu-jitsu for yourself, get your kid involved, because watching your kid do something and succeed, watching them be proud of themselves, watching them cry, watching them, it's all genuine responses. When they win, they're excited. When they lose, they're torn up. And making kids win, or making, those kids 13, anywhere from 7 to 15, 16 succeed is the best for me, is the best feeling. I enjoy that a ton, and watching them do techniques that adults, are like I always say that my competition kids class is better than most of my blue belts. Wow. Reason being, because I'm a business, right? So I'm a victim of capitalism, whereas I have to make sure that everybody in the gym is happy and they're getting things they want. For kids, to a degree, I have to do that, but they're much easier to go like, hey, I want 20 scissor sweeps, then 20, kick the knee out scissor sweeps, then I want 20 scissor sweep the triangles, and they're going to do it because they're so used to getting directions and having to do things now, other than adults that are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do 20, 20, 20. Like that's 60 techniques or 60 drills. It's like, the kids are doing it. The kids are doing it, and they're doing it faster than y'all. And that's why their jiu-jitsu looks insane, at this level. I lost track. I'm sorry. I went off kilter for a second.
No, it's fine. What I'll do? I'll pick up what you were saying there, because that's actually going to lead us to something else. So during time that people are laid up and injured, how much of an advocate are you for drilling during that time? Is drilling a pretty good time well spent, do you think, during downtime?
There's a new thing out there that's like drilling is not right, or drilling is. I'm still trying to figure that out. I got the books, of whatever play training and like kind of like letting things happen. For me, drilling is good if you are doing the drilling correctly. Like, I want to feel the technique, I want to understand the technique, and I want to feel what's working, and I want to feel the mechanical details happening. And if I can feel that, and I can do that again and again and again and again, when I do that against somebody who's a live opponent, it's very easy for me to finish that technique, because I already have an understanding of what it should feel like. So once there's something feels off or doesn't feel the exact way that I would want it to, then I have to readdress the drill and have to look at the other options, like we were talking about, like what else is out there? How much of this do I need to finish or complete this technique? But yeah, I'm still in the mindset that drilling, mindful drilling, is still one of the most important things you can do. So playing like, a game where only you can pass, or I do all that stuff. Like you can only use underhooks. I'm sure there's studies like that out there but you have to also understand the kind of people that you're dealing with, right? Like, you can't change the entire style of teaching everything that people have been taught for their entire life, right? And then go, well, this is a better way, and have people understand that, right? Because for my generation, I can't write in cursive, but when I was taught to write in cursive, I had to write in cursive on a piece of paper over and over and over. I bet you I could still write in cursive really poorly, but it would like look all childish, but repetition, I remember, right? I remember things from having to do these things over and over again. There's a reason why I still do my division, like with the little guy over the top and then moving down, right? The order of operations has been drilled in my head. And so I do the same thing with jiu-jitsu, the order of operations. So, but that changes. It doesn't always mean that it's technique, one technique. Sometimes it's transition, technique, right? So I go from De La Hiva to lasso to collar sleeve to omoplata. You know what I mean? Like I'm not doing my drill to where it's just collar sleeve omoplata. I'm doing it from where I'm getting into, like, they push the knee down, I go to this position. Now I'm in that position. Now I put the foot on the hip, pull the sleeve. Now I'm in a position for the triangle or the omoplata. The guy puts the knee on the elbow to the knee. I'm going to break that grip and then go omoplata. It's like your drilling should mature, where sometimes you don't even have to do a technique. You're just going through different positions because a guard is the exact word a guard should be, right? Guard is a defense. So me transitioning from De La Hiva to lasso guard should not be any different than the two guards shouldn't be any different. Does that make sense? Like they're both secure. They're supposed to be both secure positions. So that's why you have to understand these guards, or at least the things that branch off from your guard, like De La Hiva. Like, okay, you know De La Hiva, you know some techniques there. Now it's time to understand the transitional position that can help you when your guard shut down and to get you to a new safe spot.
You've done a really good job of explaining like all the things that can be done effectively when you're injured. And drilling, I think, is a really important one, especially drills that don't have any like resistance. Like I know some people have the opinion that flow drilling and just going chaining one technique after another can be, I guess, less effective than like live drilling where you're doing a specific positional sparring. And I could see the argument for that for sure, but at the end of the day, I think just staying connected to the mat, staying connected to techniques, getting some repetitions in, whatever you're able to do during your time out is much better than just sitting and doing nothing and not learning anything at all. And it's hard to do, but I think that reframing an injury in your mind from a frustrating experience to a time for deeper study and an opportunity to improve other areas of your game is really important. Like you mentioned earlier, that there's the importance of switching from one thing to another. Like if you're not able to do option A because of your injury, right, what's option B then? And man, there's been countless stories of athletes who've like completely transformed their games after an injury.
One of my favorites is the guy who won the World Series with the Red Sox, right? Whenever they I think they beat the Yankees. He was a knuckleballer, right? And he would throw it, you got to throw your fingertips and basically so it has no momentum on it. He used to be a regular pitcher. He blew his arm out. He couldn't pitch anymore like that. So he could only throw knuckleballs, and he ended up winning a World Series. Like he was the main pitcher that got credited for them to win the World Series. And I think he was the final pitcher for them to win the pennant or whatever, win the championships. Wow. So I mean, it's crazy, the stuff that you hear about, that where you get somebody whose whole thing gets turned upside down and they make a success story out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the world of jiu-jitsu, I always think of Gordo. Like Gordo is the guy that's credited with completely revolutionizing the half guard itself. And he started playing it because he injured his knee and he couldn't play close guard like he used to. And, that obviously took him into saying, okay, well, I can be in half guard without pain. So what can I do from here? And he's the one that's credited to adding lots of sweeps and transitions and everything that we do now in half guard. And in your own experience, like with your neck injuries and your knee injuries, has there been any aspect of your game that you can credit to an injury forcing you to develop?
Well, Heisengard's one.
Yeah.
That's perfect for my injury. I would say playing spider guard. Like I wasn't a huge spider guard person before, and then learning spider guard at least as a hold somebody off position. So like it's less of a scramble, I don't play the Michael Zenga spider guard where where I'm getting stacked like a crazy person, but I play the lasso, and the lasso guard allows me to transition to other things. So the whole thing I want to know, what I want to do is I want to be underneath my opponent. right? For my game, if I can be underneath my opponent, then I'm going to succeed somewhere. And so playing spider guard and then going to inside X, so spider inside X where you stomp and the guy gets lifted over you, and then you have like your inside X hook and then one spider hook, right? That was hugely transformative to my game. And nobody can put pressure on my spine. Nobody can put pressure on my neck. I'm underneath my opponent, which is a perfect position for me to sweep from and have no weight placed on me. So yeah, I would say spider, and then the spider transitioned into me playing spider. I call it inside spider X. So I'm not sure if I know there's a guy who's pretty good at it. Abmar Barbosa is pretty talented at that guard. So I watched a lot of his stuff. I watched a lot of his matches and seeing kind of things how it was working. And if I can get underneath you, I feel really confident and really good. And to talk about the rolling, so like when we're talking about the like the resistance rolling, right? I don't necessarily agree with, because half of the techniques, if you recognize the technique that I'm doing, right, I'm usually transitioning out of that technique, right? Like if you know I'm going to go for a scissor sweep, right, and I start to go scissor and I sense you're already setting up a defense or a hop over or a long step or something, I'm changing it. So anytime you use resistance type drilling, you're going to have to change what you're doing. You're not going to be able to, like, if the guy's worth his salt, right? The guy who's defending is worth his salt. You're not going to get that position. You're not going to get that technique because he knows what's happening. He understands that the technique's happening and he knows how to, what he needs to do in order to kill it. You have to transition. It's time to go. You know what I mean? So like, I think a lot of people should understand that when they're drilling, or if they go, oh, well, let's drill, this De La Riva sweep where you push and pull the leg out and the person just keeps stopping you because they know exactly what you're going to do. It's like, well, yeah, well, then now play that and go, okay, well, we go live drilling. I'll start that, but I have to now understand all the other transitions that I can possibly do from here because he's going to stop it. He's going to stop it. So what's next?
That's a great point, man. That's a great point for sure.
Yeah.
Malachy, I'll tell you what, man, we've reached about the halfway point of the show here. This is where I always play a game with my guests. Now, this is the third time you've been on the show, so you're a returning champion of the pummel game.
Yes.
But I want to put you through the pummel one more time. I'm going to try to pick some questions that I haven't asked you before.
Okay.
For people new to the show, the pummel's a series of random questions. Some of these are about jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But we're going to play with Malachy for the third time here. Malachy, first question for today, man. Let me pick one that I probably didn't ask before. Who's a celebrity you'd love to roll with?
I don't want to roll with anybody that's rolled with other people. So no Tom Hardy. You've already hoarded yourself out, Tom Hardy. You're over. You know what I mean? Like you screwed around too much. I mean, I would assume so does the person have to do jiu-jitsu?
No.
Okay, cool. I mean, I would have to say Larry David.
Larry David, yeah.
He would hate it.
I was just thinking that would be great just for the commentary, the dialogue alone. That's why.
He would hate it.
We could just literally do a podcast, an audio only podcast version of a role, and that would be very entertaining.
Yeah.
Good choice. I like that. What do you think is what is the best advice you've ever received?
I've received so much good advice. The best advice I've ever received was, I can't even put it to a quote or something like that, but it's like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and you're still going to be where you are. Like you can't stop some things, right? So I can't stop my neck. I can't stop my back. I can't stop the things that happen. The only thing I can do is pick up where I'm left off and what I have left. And, that's something I have to always remind myself, especially when treating my family well, or treating my wife well, or treating even myself well, is that yeah, it sucks that this happened, or yeah, it sucks that this is not a part of my life anymore, or this has changed, but I have to pick up and decide what I'm able to do and do that to the best of my ability, to the most extent of my happiness that I can make. I mean, that's it for the, I mean, there's tons of quotes that are just like that, but it's like, man, fucking shit's going to happen. And that's it. Whether you like it or not, something bad's going to happen. We don't make it through life without scars. And, you know, I'm lucky enough to not have dealt with, you know, like the passing. My parents are alive. You know what I mean? There's tons of good things in my life. You know, the neck and the back injury and all these other things are hurtful because it's something that I love to do, and it's kind of changed. But I also have never dealt with a family member dying. Some people's family members have passed when they were, you know, 9 years old, or they never met their family, or they never met their, you know, or so there's a lot of sad stories, you know what I mean? And life's gonna fuck you up. It's gonna go after you. And so if you just have to pick up with what you have and make the best of it.
That's great advice, man. Definitely. Yeah. Do you prefer a takedown or a guard pull?
I mean, I'm so limited in my takedowns. I like collar drags. I like setting up ankle picks and stuff like that. So I would say old me, I'm looking for counter throws, you know, like somebody to get on a single, get on. So I stand really tall. I used to stand really tall, and I want people to kind of go in on my hips, and I look for a counter there. Now I would say I look to pull to sweep immediately. You know, like I'll pull and lift up, overhead sweep or something. I'm looking to pull and sweep right away. I'm not looking to pull and like sit on my butt without any grips.
Good answer. I like it. Who's your favorite MMA fighter of all time?
Man, I don't know if anybody will ever know this. I've been trying to find him too. So if you see this, Joachim Hansen.
Oh yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah. In fact, you know what? I think I asked you about that last time. I did ask you about that last time. So we talked.
I mean, dude, it's so, I don't even know where he is. It was so awesome, dude.
Yeah. No, he was great.
So yeah.
I remember giving you extra points for naming a pride fighter
when they actually fought, right? I watched Mirko Cro Cop fight Vanderlei Silva in the open weight Grand Prix.
Oh man. And
I forgot what it was like when fighters weren't trying to guard a belt.
Yeah.
When it's a sport, but less of a sport, right? Because like they're trying to like win rounds and stuff. Back then they were trying to like smash people with technique that they had, but they were trying to kill them, you know? Nobody was trying to make it to the end of the third round winning on the cards. And that's kind of changed the whole aspect of training.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. Pride was definitely a special time in the history of MMA for sure. It was probably my favorite era. What do you think is the biggest risk you've ever taken in your life?
I mean, the biggest risk I've ever taken in my life was probably opening an academy. I mean, when you have no money and you've come from no money whatsoever, and then to attempt to sell it to other people and make it a lifestyle and make it pay you for and be the main income for your family. That was, you know, I think I put down about 20K into it. So it was like, I don't even think I would even like that would even like exist in my life. I wouldn't even think that kind of money was possible. And I took that, and I guess there's risks almost every single day with the way I approach things and the things that I'm trying to do, or the amount of time that I'm spending with certain projects to try to get them off the ground. And now I'm just risking time now. And that's kind of like a weird thing is like, I'm talked about the MMA stuff that I'm doing about the MMA breakdowns that I'm working on. And that could be a whole lot of effort and no result. And that's basically what things are, is like, hey, how much time do you have to push into this? And when are you ready to pull out? And that's the kind of thing that's kind of always fearful, because I'm always looking for something else to, I don't know. I have an obsession with not achieving, but completing things, making things that are accepted or people like, or things that I enjoy and other people enjoy that I did it. So it's a constant like kind of battle for me to do that. And I buy the equipment, I buy the process, I spend a ton of time doing it. And then it could all be like, to nothing. So
yeah,
but that's life. You have to take that risk. Like if you just go, like, I'm not talking poorly to anybody who's in a 9-to-5, like, let's say labor or retail area, right? Whether they're working in McDonald's, or they're working in Walmart, or whatever they're working in, you're going to be there for as long as you decide that you're going to be there and not take a risk to do something else. And if you want more, like, that doesn't say that you don't have to like Walmart or working at a restaurant or working somewhere, but if you want something else, you're going to have to invest in yourself. One of my favorite quotes is from Moneybag Yo. and I'll say this, it goes, scared money don't make money. So at some point, the money that you make, that you feed yourself with, you're going to have to invest that money into yourself, and you're going to have to take a risk and try to, whether it's paying somebody to help you set up a podcast, or whether it's money to help you set up a technique breakdown segment, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, you're going to have to invest money into that. And you may not see a return right away. You may not see a return at all, but you're going to have to life doesn't take people that are cautious all the time. You want to be cautious, but you also want to take a chance. And that's the same thing that can be said very much so for people in jiu-jitsu. Like, the person's like, well, I want to be a world champion. Okay, well, how old are you? I'm 23. Well, now's the time to do it. Don't wait until you're 30, right? Now's the time to live with 5 other guys in an apartment complex, bounce on the weekends and train as much as you possibly can train, and get near a place that develops champions. You're going to have to take that risk.
Malachy, what do you think is your favorite place in the world that you visited?
I am a curmudgeon. I hate traveling. I hate seeing things. I'm one of these. So like, I'm one of the people that goes like, if you could take me to the Grand Canyon, and I'd be like, I've seen pictures better. You could take me, I don't know. You could take me anywhere in the world, and I bet you I've seen a picture that's better than that of that exact place.
That's so good. That's
so
awesome.
Traveling for me is not a tourist thing. It's not so yeah, I don't know. I don't have a place. There's people that are in these places that I meet, and it's very cool. You know what I mean? Like but if you're going to take me to a place where it's like, hey, you're going to go to the Greece, and you're going to overlook that crazy white buildings I don't care. I don't care.
Send me a picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Final question for the pummel game, Malachy. What would you say is your top 4? Let's say your jiu-jitsu Mount Rushmore. What 4 faces would you put on jiu-jitsu's Mount Rushmore?
What is the criteria? Do they have to be so important to jiu-jitsu that they are?
It's your Mount Rushmore, my man. Anything the people that you think have contributed the most to jiu-jitsu, or just your 4 favorites. There's no wrong answer.
Let's piss everybody off.
Okay.
Sakuraba,
Just Sakuraba 4 times.
Four Sakurabas. With him beating 4 different Gracies.
You are making friends across the community right now. It's awesome.
I would go with Maeda, because I think you have to, right? Even though he's not jiu-jitsu, but he's the guy that created jiu-jitsu as we know it. I would then go Carlos. Then, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Royce Gracie, but what he did for the public and what he brought the attention to, Royce definitely stood up and like stood on his 10 and like made sure that he was successful. You know, like he could have screwed it up. You know what I mean? Like he could have lost to Ken Shamrock. Yeah. He could have, but man, when the pressure was on, he did it, and it catapulted jiu-jitsu into, you know, another level of respect and understanding. Then I would give it to, man, I wish there was somebody, Carlson. I don't know.
Good answer.
I mean, I think, you know, there's a lot of arguments for everybody else's lineage and everybody else's what they're about. And, you know what I mean? Like for some people, it would have been Helio over Carlos, right? And for some people, it would have been Hickson over Carlson, or, you know what I mean? Like there's of course there's these like branches. And then there's, you know, if you get we should put Robert Drysdale on there too, just for talking the truth, for him pissing everybody off in the world and him being like, oh, actually, but yeah, Carlson, I think brought, you know, like if you look at the people who lost to certain people in Brazil, and Carlson came in and just battered those people, like, you know, like Zulu and guys like this. I mean, like he was the guy, you know, he was probably the most fighting champion that the Gracies had. Then he took jiu-jitsu and shared it with other people outside of the family, and not the self-defense stuff as much, and more of the MMA sport and the jiu-jitsu sport. And he was very, very aggressive in sport jiu-jitsu. So that creates what we have today, rather than it just being like a demonstration by the Gracies. Now we have people fighting with jiu-jitsu against each other because Carlson kind of butted heads with every single other Gracie family, brought in guys that weren't Gracies and to beat Gracies, you know, or to beat their students, while they were kind of teaching self-defense. He did you know, and then look at the guys that he created. He had Mario Sperry, Ricardo Laborio, my coach, Murillo Bustamante, Eduardo Rios. I mean, there's guys that are in that vacuum, that those are some of the biggest names ever, and they could all in their right place be next to somebody else that's saying, well, what about this guy? You know?
Yeah.
So that's I think, you know, but I also think Sakuraba should be on there.
Yeah, we'll chisel a 5th face for Sakuraba for sure. and Malachy, that's a great lineup, great Mount Rushmore, and that was the final question for the Pummel game. Congratulations, you win for the 3rd time. You got your double underhooks once again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Of course,
I'm always winning.
You're always winning.
Is there a loser to this? Has anybody ever lost the Pummel?
No one's ever lost the Pummel, but one guy one time didn't finish because we ran out of time. So I guess there's one guy that lost the Pummel due to time.
One underhook, just waiting.
He got one. It wasn't good, man. We've talked about people who are injured and who are out of jiu-jitsu and what they can be doing while injured, and how the learning never stops, even if you can't physically go to the gym. What about people who are just limited on time in general? People who have a demanding job, people who have a family. Let's say a student out there can only fit like a couple hours a week tops into their schedule. How would those hours be best spent, in your opinion? If you're not doing the things that people that are there all the time are doing. So like if I'm there all the time and I'm taking notes and you're not taking notes, you're not getting the most out of your jiu-jitsu. If you're not going home and you're not getting on an instructional to look at
past what your abilities are and trying to get to add another layer to your jiu-jitsu, then you're not doing enough, for yourself. There's times where I myself find like I have extreme ADD. I just I will remember something and then I'm like trying to go into the middle of like teaching it. I forgot what I was about to teach. Like that's how bad it's gotten. But the thing is that if you're not a lot of times I'll be like, I'll watch an instructional and I don't watch an instructional. I just go through TV forever. And then all of a sudden I'm like doing nothing. You have to find time when you can to apply the instructional, put the instructional on. You have to find different time when it's time to write. At night is the time where I used to visualize the most. Like before I fall asleep, I would try to think of every single take. And this is like a long time ago. This is about when I had about 7 years of training. So that's like maybe 2007, 2008. And I would just visualize every single technique that I know, like just go to fall asleep. That's obsessive compulsive behavior. But if you want to be good at jiu-jitsu, you have to apply things that make you better at things, right? Like treat it like it's an actual class. So if I only can go to 3 biochemistry classes, right? And I know that I'm going to have a test on it. Number 1, I have to be present during the classes. Number 2, I have to take notes. And number 3, I have to do my homework at home so I'm prepared when I come back to the next day of class. So I always say, write down your notes, visualize through your notes, read them, do it in the morning, read them. So I go at night, read them, visualize through it. Then in the morning, do it, visualize, read through it. And then in the car, right before you get out to go to the gym, to the training, read your notes, visualize, and then go into the academy and drill those things that you were just visualizing. Then try to apply them in your regular rolling, right? Like you're going to have to try to start, or you can, it's as simple as asking somebody like, hey, can I start in Delahiva? If that's what you're working on and the other person's either not going to let that happen because they're going to stay on their knees, or the other person's just too good, like you have to make kind of like deals with people like, hey, can we just do pass and sweeps? Like if you sweep me, it's over. If I sweep, because if the other person's so much better than you, right? And once they sweep you or once they pass your guard, they're just going to stay there until they submit you. And it's just like you stuck in one position trying to get out a whole bunch. You're not really learning much there. But if you're putting yourself in the Delahiva over and over again and they're passing your Delahiva, now you have time to take in inventory and take in the information that you're being given by them stripping the grips, by them going to this position, by them doing this. And hopefully you're catching on and going, okay, I'm losing this grip every time. Every time I lose this grip, he pushes my knee down. Once he pushes my knee down, everything's gone. So you got to go, okay, I got to stop that grip from being pushed down. Right. So that's why you can make the most out of 3 days. 3 days a week is still really, really good. For somebody who's very busy, who has family, work, and everything. That's 3 days. I get people that come in 2 days a week, 1 day a week, miss a whole 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like those people, I don't know what to do for you. Like if you're missing 2 weeks, there was a time where you could have come in. I almost guarantee it. Right? In those 2 weeks, you weren't just like blasted with work for like that. There was an hour that you could have come. So you got to be honest with yourself too. Like don't tell yourself you're too busy when there's moments where like you could leave right now and you could make class, but you decided on yourself to be like, I haven't really hung out, like just relaxed as much as I would like to. Well, that's on you. That's not you. That's not that you can't make it. That's just that you decided not to make it, So I think being honest with yourself and understanding that when you're being productive and when you're not being productive. And there's time and place for both, right? So there's time and place for us not to be productive and just like veg out and be a human being and just kind of like ease things out. But there's other times for us to be productive. And if our time allows and you want to be good at something, don't bitch about everything else if you can do it. That's I always tell people, I'm like, you really couldn't make it or you couldn't make it. They're like, well, I'm like, you couldn't make any days. Like, well, I could have. So, all right. That's the real answer. The real answer is work has been busy. I could have made it, but I decided not to when I could have. And that's on you, man. That's up. Those other people that are working harder are going to be better than you. But that's okay, because that's how it should be. People who work harder, people who invest more time should be better than you. And if you quit jiu-jitsu because of that, then fuck, I don't know.
It's a tough one, man. Here's another question. This is something I think in over 600 plus episodes, I don't think I've ever asked anyone about this. I remember being a young guy in jiu-jitsu and thinking, damn, this is expensive. Like, I wasn't making much money in my early 20s, and I had to take a bunch of breaks early on in my journey just due to being broke. I couldn't afford to pay some months. How can someone who's in a financial pinch still develop skills if they can't afford training and they also can't afford things like instructionals? Like, I don't know, say your college student that's waiting tables, or
they're in a tough bind. If you're young, you should be around other young, dumb kids and like who want to do jiu-jitsu but can't, and you should train with them. Like, like you can train with people that suck as long as you are both looking at something and then you're rolling around. At least you're getting an idea of training and stuff like that. But the true thing is how important is jiu-jitsu to you? If you can't afford it, what are you affording now? Right? Like I said before, when I took this so seriously, I took MMA so seriously that I lived with 5 other people in a 2-bedroom apartment. Now back then it was only $500, but also minimum wage was like $6, right? So how can I make that happen for me? I can live with more roommates than I normally do, right? I can work on the weekends and bounce or do whatever. And how much comfort food do I need? Do I need just a bunch of frozen turkey burgers? Is that what I live off of? That's what I'll live off of. So like, that's what I had to do in order to the training for MMA that I wanted. The same thing could be said for, do you live alone? Yeah, I live alone. I have my own place and I'm very busy. I have school and work. Well, if you didn't live alone, half of your rent would be gone. Right? So if you really wanted to do jiu-jitsu, then yeah, unfortunately you have to share rent with somebody. Or what kind of, are you going out to eat? Are you going, are you going on the weekends? Are you going out? And if you're only spending $50 on the weekends, that's every weekend, that's $200. If you're only spending, I got food. Well, you didn't have to get food. There's I'll never understand, because I suffered through, I put myself through very like basic health, like tuna, turkey burgers, like things that I didn't go out to eat. I didn't like go to Five Guys. I didn't go to, for my birthday, I think I went to Red Robin. That was like the first time I had, I actually ate at a restaurant. So I'm not eating at restaurants. There's always something you can do. Now there's Uber. You're telling me that if you're broke, but you got a car, you could Uber and probably make in that night or 2 nights the amount of money that you need to make for the gym. You're not going to make a living off of it, but you're going to. So the thing goes, well, yeah, how bad do you want it? What are you spending your money on? Are you buying coffee from Starbucks? Are you buying coffee from Dunkin' Donuts? I don't even care if that's $3 a day. It's you have to figure out how important it is to you. And because as easy as it is, I tell people this all the time. Like, so maybe somebody's like, oh man, I don't have the money in the bank. I haven't been working a lot. I'm like, can you use a lawnmower? There's kids out there doing lawn care is expensive now. Yeah. You can't get away without spending like $80 to $90 for somebody to do your lawn. Do their lawn for $40. and then do that once a week, and then you got your money. Like, I hate to sound like an asshole to some people, but you can do it. You can make money. There's ways out. You can't make a living, but you can add something to your life that makes living easier.
I've known a lot of guys coming up that that found ways. In fact, I'm one of them. I eventually found ways. I'm like, okay, if I can, bust tables, or if I can, actually, there's next to our academy at the time, there was a furniture store, and they needed guys in the back just to assemble furniture. And it was it wasn't a huge pay or anything, but I've calculated, like, man, if I do that 3 days a week after my normal job, though, I can that'll cover jiu-jitsu. So yeah, there's definitely, where there's a will, there's a way, as they say. So I love that you pointed that out, man. But for the people, let's say that people that even if they're doing that, let's say for whatever reason they're not able to come up with extra money. I love the idea of finding guys, like-minded individuals, and getting together in a garage somewhere and going over tapes, going over studying jiu-jitsu, watching instructionals. I think that's a great solution too. So let me ask you this: some schools have like protocol in place for students who are struggling financially. There's like scholarship programs, or there's we've all known a guy that like cleans the mats or cleans up the academy before and after. Is that something that you do in your academy? Do you have?
I mean, I've done it. And I hate to sound jaded, but anytime I've ever given anybody a break or given them something else to do, like clean the bathroom, empty the trash cans, it becomes like almost like a passive aggressive thing that they have to do things in the gym while other people are training, or before they leave, or what I mean? Like I've never had anybody. I do have that for people that can teach and stuff like that. So like they assist me in the class, and we'll talk about lowering your rate. So I do that, but the people that like you give a break to or a scholarship to, those people don't show up. Those people also don't. It's very strange when you start to give something to somebody, they take it as that's how it always should be. Like, I should always be free.
I could see
that.
And
it's like if they get a job or if they get something and then they do less work, that their work is sloppy. They didn't empty the garbage cans. The mats weren't mopped. And it's like, at some point they just start to think like they kind of deserve they've been here long enough. They kind of deserve just to be, trained. And so it's kind of weird. I don't offer that stuff anymore because I know what I'm going to get. I know I'm going to get, like, if there's somebody I like, maybe I'll do them. I'll figure out a way to make things more feasible for them. But it's very odd. I've never come across somebody so far that has been proud of their work in the gym to pay for their membership.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that happening. I've probably, as I'm thinking about it now, I've probably seen things like that play out in the academy, different academies I've trained at in the past. So I can understand your position on that for sure.
And we're always the bad guy. So the coaches, the guy who owns the gym is always the bad guy. Anybody that takes money from you is always the bad guy. It's like, whoa, why? Like, if you didn't have money in the account and all of a sudden it took your money, right? Like, it's like, oh man, fuck him, dude. No, dude, this is my business. This is everything that I have. Like, I'm here every single day. What do you mean? Like, Malachy's a dick. He's not letting me like clean up for money. I'm not, because I don't trust you. I'm sorry. This is, like, nowadays it's not like Karate Kid empty. Like, my rent is fucking really high.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. My insurance is high. My, like, everything is really high, and it's very easy to point. So like, those people, the same people that things go bad with, are also connected to the gym via the locker room, where I don't go. I don't go in the locker room. I don't go. I'm different, where I don't hang out with my students very much. Right. Because I believe that there should be a boundary there. And I try to tell my other students the same thing, or the coaches the same thing. Like, there needs to be boundaries. But those guys that have a problem or can't do the work or whatever, those guys are then going into your locker room because you just told them like, hey man, you're fucking up. Like, why aren't you cleaning stuff? Why is everything left out? Where's the merchandise that I told you to hang? You know, like, and then the guy goes into the locker room and he starts bitching me out, talking shit about the coach, the academy, the owner. So I don't even want that to get created where it becomes like a cancer in the gym and I got to throw the person out because he's talking to white belts about how shitty this place is. But, you know, like while they're like on cloud 9 because it's the first jiu-jitsu gym they've been in. And they're like, I love it. What are you talking about? They're like, oh, really? This guy sucks? Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a real asshole, I guess. You know, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, you'd never want to give people that kind of opportunity to get close enough to you to where that they can bitch about something other than jiu-jitsu. If they want to bitch about my jiu-jitsu, then they can do that because I don't give them any reason to. You know what I mean? I don't give anybody a reason to bitch about my quality of class, but they can bitch about a million other things. And I try not to let them have any of that information, you know?
No, that's a good policy for sure. There's another policy you just mentioned. You don't like to you like to keep boundaries between the instructors and the students as far as social hangouts and stuff. When did you start doing that? Is that something you've always done since the beginning, or was there something that happened that caused you to?
I've always been somewhat removed from my my teammates and my coaches and things like this. You know, like I have a good respect. So like I have a personal relationship with Laborio, but I have a very, very good respect for who he is. Right. I know him as a person, and that changes things slightly because you always see people differently as gods or whatever. And then you realize this is a human being, you know? It's not that like anything happened. It was that like letting somebody, I'm number one, I'm very terrible at that. Hey, how are you doing, my friend? It's good to see you. And not to feel that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't have it in me to hug somebody and tell them what's up if I don't feel that. You know, if I don't feel like hugging you, I'm not going to hug you. If I say hi, it's because I really mean hi.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, how you doing? I really meant that. I don't mean the hug and all the other crap. And I sometimes saw black belts take advantage of their students. You know, like they would go to dinner and they wouldn't pay. They wouldn't even think about paying. You know, or they're like they're the black belt everywhere and everywhere they go. You know, like at a restaurant, they're a black belt. At this, they're a black belt. You know, it's like, I don't ever want to get into that. I don't ever want to get involved in being kind of like given items or prizes or tokens or food paid for me. I don't want that stuff because I want there to be a very clear line of who we are. Right. Like I'm a person that teaches you jiu-jitsu. In the jiu-jitsu gym, you're going to respect me. Everywhere else, it's going to just be, you know, like we're people, you know, but I'm also not going to put myself in a situation where I have to go to your birthday party, right? Take time away from my life to go to your birthday party, right? And then not go to somebody else's birthday party, right? Like I can't treat everybody like they would like to be treated. And I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings because I could go to this one thing, but I can't go to their thing. You know, so if anybody ever invites me, and this is how I usually get rid of any invitations, I say, they go like, hey man, do you want to come over and for a barbecue and watch the fights? And I'm like, hey, as long as you invite the entire gym, I can go.
It sounds like you would be a terrible cult leader.
Yeah. I'm not a very cultish person. I think I should be a little bit more of a cultish person. Like I think I'm the polar opposite, you know? I'm the Larry David of my gym. Like everybody kind of comes to me and stuff, but they're like, I don't know about that guy.
That's great, man. There's something else we were talking about earlier. We were talking about people like getting through injuries and getting through training when they have a hectic schedule. There's another topic I'd like to pick your brain on a little bit, if you don't mind. What advice would you give to aging black belts? Because there's obviously, we've talked on the show a lot about people getting older and the 40 plus crowd in jiu-jitsu. We don't usually aim that at black belts, though. What advice would you give to people that are aging black belts?
I think I'm becoming. I am one of those aging black belts that trained when I was younger, had all that stuff going from like the innovations, the learning, the this, the that, changing from gi to no gi. I've had all those those moments in my jiu-jitsu, like where like, oh, now I'm doing no gi. Okay, now I'm doing no gi competitions. Now I'm doing heel hooks. Now I'm doing, gi, primarily gi now. And I think the hard thing for us to think about is, okay, what is an aging black belt? And what do I want out of, like, so it's kind of funny. It's like, what do I want out of a role? I want to, like, it's in me to submit you. Right? It's inside of me to submit somebody, maybe once, maybe twice, but I don't want to keep submitting you. You know what I mean? Like, I want to hit a highlight here and there. But the main thing I really want to do is I want to like kind of like bat you around. You know what I mean? And I know I was talking with a very good friend of mine who's my age. He's been doing it for 30 years. He's a little bit older than me. And sometimes you just want to get in there, and it's kind of like a monkey. It's like we are monkeys, right? So we're just a higher form of monkey, and one monkey is always going to dominate another monkey, right? At some point, right? It might be close or whatever. But if you're the dominant monkey, you just kind of want to play with your food a little bit. You want to you want to go in there, you want to smash, you want to like pass their guard, you want to know that you can do these things. And then it becomes kind of like, okay, if I tap him out, we're going to have to restart. And I don't want to do all these restarts where he keeps having a neutral position. I want to stay in this side control position, and I want to see how heavy I can possibly make myself. Or if I want to see if I can let him get an angle or get an underhook, what he can do with that, and then take it away from him. And so I think for like aging black belts, I think an older black belt, it becomes less about the new intricacies of jiu-jitsu, right? Like the new intricacies of like, we still want to know it. Like if like the berimbolo comes around, you want to know it. Squid guard comes around, you want to know it. But generally, I just want to know positions better. I want to know the submissions that I do better, but I want to be more of who I am in each position. If that makes sense. So like, I'm like going backwards, and I'm like, when I'm in side control and, I put all my weight into one part of my shoulder, and I want that to be better than it ever has been. You know what I mean? Like I want that one part of my jiu-jitsu to be like smothering, and then unless I decide to give up a little bit of space, I don't want that person to be able to move, and then I give them a little bit of space and I want to take it back away. It's kind of like testing the new waters of aging black belts or aging belts in general. But especially those that have been doing this for a long time. It's getting into the very, very small, invisible jiu-jitsu, and I'm sure this is what Henry Atkins and these other, the Dirty Dozen guys that are coming out with tapes and stuff like that. I'm sure that that's a lot of things that they're talking about. It's because once you've figured, and it's something like Craig Jones. Like Craig Jones is teaching what I would say is now aging black belt jiu-jitsu, right? And I don't think you kind of stumble upon, if I just do this, I can do this. Like if I just put my leg here across his shin, he can't move and it's very painful for him. I did look at Craig Jones pinning, his pinning instructional. It's really good. He's got a better system to it. So he put a system to it, which is always important when you're doing things like this, or at least if you're putting an instructional out. But it's not like anybody taught him that stuff, like that's just being a black belt for so long and going, what happens if he gets out of mount, puts me in half guard, and I just throw the other leg over the other part of the leg, and now I'm just like riding his legs. Basically, Khabibing people, you know what I mean? Like locking yourself into somebody, or you're locking out their hip bone so that they can't move or turn their waist. And then how can you make it more pressure? Well, if he's on his side and I'm forcing him to be on this side, I'm now going to push his chest flat. Now he's getting like a spinal turn on top of getting this. So what is he going to want to do? Go that way as much as he can. And when he gives that, that's going to be the choke. You know, like that's going to be the thing, because he can only relieve the pressure of his body when things are being like twisted, you know, where the body shouldn't be turning. And I think Craig Jones, and he's done it, I think, the best out of anybody else. And that's surprising, just because he's currently in a competitive jiu-jitsu landscape. And then you say, okay, well, in that competitive jiu-jitsu landscape, this stuff does apply. It does matter, like knowing how to do these things. He's teaching like MMA stuff, right? I haven't seen the balls to the walls thing yet, but I will. I have to. I got to watch. I mean, good Lord, there's only so many hours in the day. If I watched how many BJJ Fanatics videos are out there,
yeah.
I don't think I would ever do jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I think he understands the pinning, and I think that's what black belt jiu-jitsu is understanding you've been in positions for so long. It's not actually technique jiu-jitsu. It's, hey, here's the body mechanics of something. Here's what I understand. And if I do this, I understand that I'm locking this part of the body down, or I'm locking down this part of the hips. And that means that shoulder is going to come up to compensate. And if I can put that shoulder flat, now I'm really causing a lot of discomfort and pain to my opponent. And that's going to, if I decide to let something go, he's going to give me a lot more than what he wanted. And I think that's aging black belt jiu-jitsu, is finding these things in your jiu-jitsu, not just like, oh, side control, case katami, oh, scarf hold. It's not that anymore. It's more like, well, how can I make scarf hold miserable? How can I make scarf hold more miserable than they've ever been in? Is there anything else I can add? Okay, can I start to connect with the upper body control to the lower body control? And if I do that, what happens? So like, that's where I believe most of, I mean, and you don't have to, there's plenty of very, very athletic human beings that are 40, 45, 50, 55. They're taking care of their bodies. I don't know what they're, they got good genes. And they're still doing, a lot of spinning stuff, and they're going in inverted, and they're berimboloing, and they're that's perfectly fine. My body's just not going to do that. I've tried. I keep trying, and my body keeps saying, stop this. You got to stop. And so rather than continuing to try to make my jiu-jitsu so modern with the new modern game, even though I still think I have a modern game, I realize that my jiu-jitsu now is just like I want to put, monkey wants to turn, I want to take monkey back down to the mat. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to allow you to have an idea that you can escape this position from me, or you can, I want to kind of play with my food a little bit and figure out things.
It's an interesting perspective to have, because I think a lot of people that start jiu-jitsu, obviously their goal is to just not be terrible in the very beginning, and they want to eventually become a blue belt. And then once you're a blue belt, you kind of have an idea of whether or not you're going to keep going all the way to black or not. And so then of course the goal becomes, okay, I want to become a black belt. And for people that become black belts, they may become teachers, they may become instructors, they might open a school, and then the journey becomes, okay, now I'm going to bestow my knowledge upon my students. Now the goal is, the reason I'm showing up every day is to teach and to grow to grow the art. But for people that are older black belts that don't have schools, I could see where you could be standing there kind of like, okay, well, I've reached my black belt. My game is pretty well defined. I feel pretty sharp in everything I do. I'm not really competing much anymore, maybe because I'm older, or if I am, maybe I'm still focusing on just really going after the masters divisions. But there's people out there, I'm sure, who are black belts that don't compete so much anymore, and also don't have schools, that are kind of like, okay, what's my motivation now? And I really like that you've emphasized, man, the science, like really diving into the scientific and sort of invisible side of jiu-jitsu, like you said. So it's really, really cool perspective there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you find those things, and it's fun to really. I mean, that's where I come out with like my instructionals and stuff like that. It's because I poke around at certain things, and I'm like, hey, this works. can I make this into something that is controllable or I can do over and over again? And if I can do it over and over again, where does it line up to? So like with stuff like with like the Heisengard and the Dars Killer stuff that I created, like it was a lot of studying and making sure that it was a reliable thing to go to. But then, like it becomes a certain part where, I mean, I would love to put out an instructional and figure out, I would just have to really like be very conscious of how I did it, because I think what, and this is again, so guys, if you're watching this is me basically giving you guys like, hey, Craig Jones, a commercial. He's already got enough Craig Jones commercials. Because if you're on anything, it says, hey, is there anything that Craig Jones can teach you? You teach no. You're like, oh, there's nothing Craig Jones can teach you. You know what I'm talking about? That ad. Okay.
Well, there's already reverse psychology there. Yeah.
There's already a push behind Craig, but I am saying that for aging black belts, that is the jiu-jitsu that that you figure out. Like you figure out holding positions and pinning positions and things that connect to other things, and you learn how to make yourself super heavy and drag, like kind of just like if you're on somebody's back and they're trying to get off, they have to feels like they're dragging a parachute behind them, So that's the kind of stuff that I think at a certain age, especially I don't think you can actually teach it as well as you could find it yourself once you're at that certain level of finding it. So it's very difficult to say like, hey, I just put my hips here and I connect it to my own hips so that when he moves, he's dragging me with him. It's very difficult to teach a three-year white belt that concept of like, hey, I'm making a link between ourselves and I'm not using any energy. I'm just going to make him use his energy to drag me around. But there's things out there like the Turk, like Craig Jones has the Turk in there. Like we've been doing this for a long time with MMA, like understanding how to lock somebody down by using the inversion of their knee to their hip and locking them into that position. Craig has it in there and it's taught solidly. So those are the things that when you get into the higher state of jiu-jitsu, is like I love talking to black belts. You know what I mean? Like I love talking to black belts that like have something that's like that they believe in, because that they've been believing in it for a long time. So there's like, give me somebody 12, 13 year black belt, you know what I mean? Like 15, however long they've been a black belt, they have a really good understanding of the body. To see that and for them to interject and have like, well, I do it like this, and I figured out how to make that one position better than anybody else's position in that there. Like I figured out, I believe that my half guard is better than everybody else's half guard because I do this. And it may be true or it may not be true, but there is something of valuable there. There's something valuable because they've been there long enough to have the idea. Yeah. So that's what's cool. I mean, yeah.
I'm always trying to be mindful of not speaking about the black belt as if it's a final destination, because I think that that's a common mental mistake people can make. Do you feel that the black belt is where your jiu-jitsu learning really begins? Because as you said, if you try to teach certain concepts to anyone that's not been training long enough, it just might not translate. Right. Do you feel like there's an exponential amount of learning that happens after the black belt?
I think like to get to black belt, everybody's like, not necessarily, if anybody says they're not rushing to get there, I don't get it. I mean, because rushing to get there means that you're so if you're a competitor and you're not rushing towards black belt, that means that you're not trying to destroy everybody you roll with, and that you're just not a competition athlete. Then, like, if every match isn't like do or die for you, like every roll, like you're going into rolls with do or die mentalities, you're going into matches with do or die mentalities, and you're trying to crush everybody up in front of you. I guess there are some competitors that are just trying to figure out life. Like, well, I'm just trying to test my jiu-jitsu here and there. But like once you get to black belt, you just got really good at beating people. Right? Yeah, you got a good set of techniques. You got very good at some invisible parts of jiu-jitsu, which is like the transitions. Transitions are a huge thing that come along when you're purple, brown, and black. Like you're catching things in transition, you're moving through, you're not thinking as much. Like you don't have to like identify necessarily identify a technique with the movement that you're going to make in order to get to the submission or technique that you want. But once you get to black belt, you are going like, yeah, it's unless you're competing at black belt and you have to have something systemized. And I agree with those people and I somewhat disagree with systemization, right? You got people on one side that do a very systematic guard. They have very specific systems that you can tell that Gianni Grippo has a very specific systemized jiu-jitsu. Then you look at guys like the Ruotolo brothers, who they've probably hit some of these things 20 times in practice, but none of it's exercised or like, hey, if he turns to this, we're going to go to this. They're identifying things in that middle of that roll. And that's where I think a lot of black belts start to become black belts, is where they stop having as many set systems and they have more of a like, okay, let's see how the doors open up. And then once you see how the doors open up, then you start to really learn jiu-jitsu. And you realize it's not really jiu-jitsu anymore. And I hate to say it sounds something stupid like that, but it's not really jiu-jitsu anymore because it's just body mechanics. It's weight, body mechanics, and levers. And you say, well, that's jiu-jitsu. Well, it's like, yeah, that is jiu-jitsu. We named something, but jiu-jitsu is techniques, right? Jiu-jitsu has allowed me to stop doing jiu-jitsu and do body mechanics, under the understanding of body mechanics and pushing places and putting my weight in different areas, which aren't technical. You know, there's no technical term or technical position for what you're doing at some point. Does that make sense? Like you're not doing the arm bar, hip, foot on hip, angle change, lever to control posture, leg over face, knees tight. There's not all of that involved anymore. That was something that was created because those moves in order with the body mechanics allowed you to have that arm in that way. Whereas when you get to a certain level of a black belt, or if you get to a certain level of like where you just get to F off in jiu-jitsu for a little bit, is that you just get to explore. You get to put yourself in positions that are heavy, positions that like dropping your shoulder, pushing their shoulder as they're trying to twist into you, understanding that maybe you can pull their hip. I mean, you just kind of understand how the body works, and you still have all that jiu-jitsu to fall back on. If somebody gets an underhook, you can of course do the under technique that's done if you need to get free of an underhook, but you don't have to go into it with techniques. You can just go into it with a mindset of like, I'm going to try to mechanically undo him. And I think that's where a lot of guard passing comes from. I think a lot of guard, like that's why I love guard passing, because it's sometimes it cannot be systemized. It's impossible to systemize something where the person on bottom can completely change the angle or the position or the grip with one movement. So they can change from spider guard to collar sleeve to De La Hiva. And basically you have to, it's not a technique to stop those things. What it is addressing hooks, which are mechanical locks onto you, and disrupting their angles and breaking their connections, which is their grips, right? So that's basically what a guard passer is doing constantly. Yeah, they're going to look for maybe they'll finish with a very basic X pass or knee slide pass, but the whole time they're involved in that like entanglement of jiu-jitsu, the guard passer is just reacting to undoing mechanical positions. Whereas you could say the player himself is putting mechanical objects in front, right, to control. But I think you can systemize that more than you can ever systemize passing.
Yeah, it's a really dynamic thing that's very hard to put into a systemized linear thing for sure.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Malachy. The last time I interviewed you, the theme of the show was basically the Blue Belt Blueprint, and it was a very successful. A lot of people really liked that episode. A lot of Blue Belts tuned in. There's something I'd like to ask you in regards to that. Now that you're a well-seasoned black belt, what advice would you have given to yourself as a blue belt?
So I didn't become a blue belt until like my 8th year of training, because I didn't do gi or any of that stuff. And I did a lot of stuff where I just taught myself. It would be nice to have been in a position where I am now, like where I'm teaching my students at blue belt now, and to have had an instructor like that at that time where I was learning new things, like learning new things is, a lot of people don't understand how special that is. But I would tell my blue belt self to slow down. I was to slow down, take notes, and learn to wrestle. Wrestling is so I come from an MMA background first before jiu-jitsu, but jiu-jitsu was my main thing, right? Because I found out that when I went to Oregon and you deal with a whole bunch of wrestlers, you have to learn how to play jiu-jitsu, all right? So you're just going to have a guard and you're going to like learn triangles and stuff. So I watched, like, most of my upbringing was watching. I can tell you right now of matches that I watched and were taught just from watching UFC. Like there was the book with Hoyler and Hinzo, written by John Danaher. That's like, there's that book out there. And then so there's some basics there. And then there was like maybe one or two things. Marcelo Garcia, I think, had just came out with a series. He didn't speak any English. But I remember like Matt Serra mounting Jeff Curran and how Jeff Curran pretended to give his back and went back to half guard. Like, if you have a teacher that's teaching you stuff, you're lucky, because a lot of us, we had to watch Carl Parisi, and okay, that's how for me, a jiu-jitsu guy, that's how I'm going to take down a wrestler. But learning how to wrestle and and the memes are true, right? Like the toughest guy, like the purple belt or the brown belt, that's like this. And then all of a sudden they don't, like, they got the worm or something like that. But it's actually a D1 wrestler. Yeah. Right. Like, wrestling is by far one of the best things that you can be. It teaches, like, I learned it in MMA, right? So, but I was always pulling guard until there's a guy named Daryl Golar, who used to be Brazilian top teams wrestling coach, and then was American top teams wrestling coach. And he just made wrestling suck so much, but was screaming at you at the top of his lungs, "Get that money. Let's go. Get that money." Like, you're like having to pick, all of a sudden you're lateraling people over your head. You're like, holy shit, this is great. I'm wrestling now. Like before I wasn't wrestling because I wanted to pull guard. It was too much. Oh, this is a lot. Pull, like this guy's strong, pull guard. You know what I mean? And understanding now where we're at in jiu-jitsu, it's like, man, look at all these wrestlers. Look at these guys who make wrestling their main game, right? In the beginning, you got Gordon, you got Felipe Pena. None of these guys are sitting and pulling guard like Marcelo was. Like, Marcelo had some takedowns too, but he was pulling and playing that open butterfly. Now you got guys that, like, even at the youngest level, you got Nicky Rod, J Rod, Colbot. These guys are wrestlers. That's what they are. They're wrestling up. And then they're forcing guys like Dante Leon, who's very good as well, to wrestle up, and he's showing his, like, everything's become, at least in the game of no-gi, if you can't wrestle, you're probably screwed at some point, right? So I would tell myself to invest in other, like, while being healthier, invest in maybe some judo. I would like to learn some good foot sweeps and stuff like that. And I think really embracing the suck, you know what I mean? Like, not taking the wins and losses so hard in on the mats, taking away from the wins and losses more so. So, like, rather than not allowing somebody to beat me going head to head at their best positions, because I didn't start doing that until like brown belt. Brown belt, I was like, okay, put me in whatever guard you want. I want to try to break out of this, you know? And I think listen to your coach. A lot of blue belts, you know, like purple belts, they're already thinking that they got a different idea, and that's cool. Have your own ideas. You may be right? Your coach may be an idiot, or you may be right and your coach is not an idiot, but you're just right for yourself. But that guy who's showing you stuff, there's a reason why he's showing it to you. I could walk away from my academy today. People in my academy, this is not me saying this. This is somebody else saying this. I could walk away from my academy and I believe my academy would still survive and would still make money for me. Right. I think I could put certain people in place. Right. And I could be there, but I could slowly exit from most of my classes. And I don't know if there wouldn't be much of an uprising. I don't think. I want to show you stuff, right? I want to. That's why I'm here. That's why I show up. I do my kids' classes. I teach kids' classes. I don't have to teach kids' classes. Like, you know, like trust me, if I phase myself out of there, the kids would never know that I was gone, because new kids come, and then it's whoever was the coach, right? The same thing happens with adult classes. Sometimes you never even knew that there was a third instructor at some other point. You come in at a different point and there's that instructor. If we're showing you things, there's a real reason why we are. And if we disagree with you and you have like hey, this is how I feel about this position, or really when I do this, I do really well. And the coach is like, hey man, look at this instead. Look at it this way. Sure, there's probably a coach or two out there that's like, can't get over his own ego. I'm sure there's guys out there, but, but I mean, there's a reason why we want to test it. We want to feel it. And there's been plenty of guys that I've said, no, I don't like that. But I've always put myself in the position where they're like gnawing on me. I'm like, okay, put me in the position. Let me see what I would do. You know, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, that works. I mean, it's almost identical results to what I'm showing, but it's your thing and you like it better. Go ahead. I don't see a hole in it. You know what I mean? And then I see a hole in the other stuff and I'm like, no, I can see a glaring hole in this. Like, until you can fix that, keep training it, keep drilling it, see what else comes along. It's something to look at, but it's not something to rest on. I can be like, okay, this is something I have here. So, and understand that coaches are out there because we enjoy teaching. You know, there's like, that's it. I enjoy teaching so much that I prepare before every class. And I've been doing that for the past 11 years. Like, there's never a time I'm going into class and I'm just like, well, arm bars, let's do arm bars. Well, you know, like, and there was a time where that was like really popular. Like, that was like where coaches were just like, they weren't in love with the sport. But now there's so many gyms that you almost have to be in love with the sport to keep up with everybody else, because we're all pushing our ass off to make it a good environment for you, you know?
Tremendous insight, man. I really do appreciate that, Malachy. Malachy, in closing, man, what are some of your major goals for 2024? What are some things you hope to accomplish personally and at the gym and in life this year?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I want to improve the gym somehow. That's going to be, you know, whether it's by adding more space or more classes or more fundamentals classes or whatever I can do to wherever I think, if I can get more space or more time or whatever God's going to like move something around for me. I'd love to get something for my students, of course. I just put out the Malaplata and the Heisengard 2. BJJ Fanatics should have that soon. And that's like, man, that's my creation and it's something that I love doing. So if you guys want to check that out, also with a coach named Joachim Ingberg or Joachim from Sweden. and Dennis Davis, from the head coach from Extreme Couture, we put out a website called The Winning Corner. And it has a ton of MMA instructional stuff. So if you're a jiu-jitsu person, and I was talking about how good Craig Jones' new stuff was, it's a lot of Craig Jones type stuff in there. That's the jiu-jitsu that you're going to learn to punch people in the face, to free your hands up. You use your legs to free your hands up so you can punch somebody in the head. Then, of course, MadLab, BJJ.com. I always put all my lessons from my classes onto my website. And I don't know what's next. I'm bored. Let's do something fun. Me and you, let's get together and let's go parasailing or something. I don't know. There's gotta be something out there. And I'm definitely putting I'm not saying no to anything. That's the things. I know that I'm tired. I know that sometimes you're down on energy. Sometimes you don't know where your next hit's going to come from. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like that, where they live really push a high to get something. I put my Malapod out there, my Heisengard out there. I put my website out there. I put all these things out there, and I put all my Instagram stuff out there. Okay, what else am I doing? And I just keep saying yes to people, and hopefully those end up in cool things and things that I can give to the community and I can take part in and be proud of. And that's the kind of stuff. I mean, it's really hard to be an old black belt that doesn't compete. You know what I mean? Because you want to win. So how do you win? You got to win by giving something to the community that they value, that they find valuable. And also, not to get sappy, but there's a guy's book, called Battle Cry. It's really good for guys to read, because we find ourselves only to be valued when somebody else finds us valuable, right? So when we put out a new instructional, or when we do something else, it's like you're just jumping to the next thing to try to make people happy and to value you as a content person, or as a instructor, or as a innovator. And it's hard, you know what I mean? Living in that kind of wins and losses kind of way, because I think a lot of other jiu-jitsu people are going to go through this in life, because if jiu-jitsu is your life, and you're living off of those wins and losses on the mats, at some point those dampen and they go away as much. You're going to have to find something else that you're going to find value, or people are going to find value in, and you're going to find as a win. So I just hope I find, I just need 3 wins this, I only need 3 fights in the UFC this year. That's if I get 3 other wins, I'm going to be really happy, and I'm going to be discontent into 2025.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Malachy, it is always a pleasure to get to talk with you, man. You always bring such great content and insight to the table. It's really appreciated. And obviously, you're welcome back on the show anytime you want to come back.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the rambling. For people that don't like rambling, just listen to it at ×2 speed.
No, dude, the content is always great, man. I seriously do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man. I always love coming on here.
That means a lot, my friend. Thank you. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Malachy, it's real easy to do so. He's active on Facebook and Instagram. You can find him there at Malachy Friedman on both platforms. His YouTube channel is Malachy Friedman BJJ. Make sure you guys subscribe and hit the little bell icon to get notified when he adds new videos. He's also got a website, madlabbjj.com. Make sure you guys check that out. If you guys are ever traveling through South Carolina, he's got an outstanding academy there. So make sure you guys drop in and train with him if you're able to pass through. And then if you're not able to make it to South Carolina, you can learn from Malachy anywhere in the world here at BJJFanatics.com. He's got several great instructionals with us. So if you type his name into our website, you'll find tons of great options that'll help you with various aspects of your game. So check it out at BJJFanatics.com. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.